Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa remains the most celebrated and execrated magician of the Renaissance, a figure whose life is often obscured by myth. His legacy is defined by two masterworks. On the left is De Occulta Philosophia, a comprehensive manual on high magic. On the right is De Vanitate Scientiarum, a blistering critique of all human learning. These two books present a sharp tension, appearing to represent mutually exclusive worldviews, the path of the devout occultist and the path of the radical skeptic. Historians frequently assume Agrippa suffered a midlife crisis, or that his defensive magic was merely a rhetorical joke used to pass the time between more serious pursuits. When read together, the apparent paradox vanishes. They reveal a unified project that challenges our understanding of the Renaissance intellectual landscape. In the early 1500s, controversial authors lived under the intense scrutiny of the Inquisition, where an inconsistent argument could lead to a charge of heresy. Agrippa drafted his magic manual in 1510. In 1530, he published his skeptical attack on the sciences. However, the timeline reveals an anomaly. Just 3 years after rejecting all science, he published the final, expanded draft of his magic manual in 1533. Agrippa used skepticism as the pars destruens, a destructive critique of a corrupted system. The magic served as the pars construens, or the constructive framework for a new one. He engineered a two-part intellectual weapon, one book to demolish a failing scientific tradition, and another to build a pure system in its place. The 16th century university was an environment dominated by scholasticism. Scholasticism was a method of learning that relied on the logical frameworks of Aristotle to interpret both nature and scripture. Agrippa's skepticism was not a claim that nothing could be known. He was executing a targeted strike specifically on this Aristotelian system. This system relied on Aristotelian empiricism, the belief that all human reason is fed by sensory perception from the outside world. This is an epistemological model. Agrippa argued this loop was broken. Human senses are easily deceived, making them a fallible foundation for truth. Any science built upon this corrupted flow is structurally unstable. For Agrippa, this faulty way of thinking led to a decay in society. Academics debated endless, useless syllogisms while ignoring the spiritual reality of the world. He dismantled the credibility of empirical science to prove that humanity was searching for truth in the wrong direction. Agrippa proposed a Neoplatonic alternative. Neoplatonism is a philosophy that views the universe as a series of levels descending from a single divine source. Rather than looking outward, we must look inward at the architecture of the soul. He defined human consciousness through the tripartite soul, a hierarchy composed of 3 distinct parts. The highest tier is the mens, or mind. This is the divine spark infused by God, containing innate, perfect ideas. The lowest tier is the eidolum, representing the sensory faculties tethered to the material world. The middle tier is ratio, or reason, the seat of free will. Knowledge is only secured when ratio actively subjects itself to the illumination of the mens. In this model, true science is not an external discovery, but an internal act of spiritual alignment and self-awareness. Agrippa mapped this psychological architecture onto the story of Genesis, treating Adam and Eve as a blueprint for the human mind. He identified the divine spark, the mens, with the figure of Adam, representing pure faith and direct communion with God. He identified the free will of ratio with Eve, representing reason's capacity to choose. The sensory input of the eidolum became the snake and the material world. Under this framework, original sin occurs when ratio, Eve, chooses to trust the sensory input of the snake over the divine illumination of Adam. Agrippa argued that university scientists recreate this fall every day by forcing human reason to rely entirely on empirical senses. He labeled academic science demonic because it perpetuates a catastrophic separation from divine truth. Agrippa's solution was to reverse this fall. By aligning reason back to faith, humanity could regain its original power over creation. He presented De Occulta Philosophia as a rigorous instruction manual for wielding this restored power. The manual describes a cosmos divided into 3 interconnected tiers that the illuminated mind can manipulate. At the base is natural magic, where the practitioner interacts with the occult virtues hidden within the earthly elemental realm. The middle tier is astrological magic, which captures and directs the rays and mathematical influences of the stars. The highest tier is ceremonial magic, dealing with the intellectual realm of angels to channel power down through the lower tiers. In this context, true magic is the operative output of a universe functioning correctly under a divinely aligned human mind. Returning to those two title pages from the beginning, we can now see how they function as a single unit. The skepticism clears out the errors of sense-based scholasticism, while the occult philosophy provides the operational manual for the soul. Agrippa's goal was not individual eccentricity, but deep pedagogical and social reform. He proposed a civic theology, attempting to replace academic arguments with a spiritually grounded science that actually assists the community. To heal society, Agrippa believed he had to first remove the institutions that blinded humanity to its own divine potential. Modern perspectives often separate magic from rigorous philosophy or theology. For Agrippa, these were components of a singular system of thought. Skepticism and magic were two sides of the same epistemological coin. The physical wonders of manipulating elements or reading stars were subordinate to the internal realignment of the human soul. For the greatest magician of the Renaissance, the highest form of magic was achieving complete, divinely illuminated self-awareness.